So we've got a quadratic inequality that we need to solve for. According to the steps, 1, you need to make sure you got 0 on one of the sides. So we've got 0 on the right side, so we're good to go there. 2, we need to find the x-intercepts by either factoring or using the quadratic formula. Now, this has a common factor of an x in it. So I'm going to take that x out front and divide everything by x. X squared divided by x is x, plus 2x divided by x is 2. So that is the factored form. From there, to find the x-intercepts, you set each one of those equal to 0. And solve. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides and get x equals 0 or x equals a negative 2. So I'm going to sketch the graph. X-intercepts are at 0 or a negative 2. If we go back to the original equation, you'll notice A is a positive 1. Positive means this opens up. Remember, it's a quadratic, so it will always look like a U. This quadratic opens up because A is positive. Ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, now, we haven't answered the question. They want to know when this graph is above 0. So that would be anything like positive 1, positive 2, anything along that line, and anything along that line. So the answer is a disjointed set. And of course, we will write the answer in all 3 forms. So number line form, you draw the number line, just like the x-axis. So there's 0 and negative 2. And we want 2 disjointed sets. No line underneath, so open circle at 0 and 2. 2 disjointed sets, so going out to the left and out to the right. Intervals, 2 disjointed sets, so that arrow there is negative infinity, comma to negative 2. Rounded brackets always on the infinity sign. Rounded brackets because it's an open circle. U for or. 0 to positive infinity. Rounded brackets on the left and on the right. And that's the interval. And symbolic, x is less than negative 2. Or x is greater than 0. So first thing you're supposed to do is make sure you have a 0 on one of the sides, so we've got that. Second thing is to factor. So we, nothing in common. 1 is in front, so if we can figure out what 2 numbers multiply to a negative 24, so that wasn't actually on your chart because I didn't make you guys do all the negatives. And add to a positive 2. So, or you could have done the quadratic formula if you want. Quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When doing the quadratic formula and you write it down, please don't then grab the calculator and type it all in because you need at least like 6 sets of parentheses to get the calculator to calculate it correctly. But let's see, what 2 numbers multiply to 24? 4 and 6. And if I subtract 4 and 6, I will get 2. So x plus 6 and x minus 4. Double check. 6 times a negative 4 is a negative 24. 6 minus 4 is 2. Set those equal to 0. Solve for x. And you have your 2 x-intercepts. Sketch the graph. -6, +4. A was a +1, so this graph will open up. And we've graphed the quadratic. Now, I understand that it's difficult and process, blah, blah, blah. But technically, that's supposed to be prior knowledge in a review. So, not saying it's easy. But this is not what we're learning in this unit. We get to this point, now is the new stuff. We don't want to know when this quadratic is equal to 0, -6 and 4. We've done that before. We want to know when this quadratic is less than or equal to 0. When is this graph less than or equal to 0? Well, -1 is there, -2, -3, -4, so on and so forth. So this quadratic is negative, less than 0, in that section there. That section there, of course, is a sandwich between -6 and 4. So write your answer in 3 forms. Number line, -6 and 4. Line underneath, so closed circles. And a sandwich in between -6 and 4. Intervals, closed circle, so square brackets. Sandwich, so -6, 4. And then symbolically, -6 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 4. Symbolically with a sandwich, you're reading left to right, just like the number line, so the negative has to be over there, positive over on the right. Arrows always point to the left on a sandwich. So, I've got a quadratic. It is set equal to 0 or has 0 on one side. It has a -1 in front, so my first thought is to do step 2 in factoring, which is to divide everything by a -1. So negative divided by a -1 is positive. Positive 4 divided by a -1. -6 divided by a -1. At this point, then, I would try to factor this, which means I need something that multiplies to a +6 and adds to a -4. Of course, multiplying to a +6 would be 1 times 6, which can only give me 5 or 7, and 2 times 3, which can only give me 5 or 1, so I can't factor it. So now I have to go to the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula, -b, so -4, plus or minus, I'm looking at the original, by the way, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4. A is a -1. If there's no number there, you assume that number to be 1. C, which is a -6. If there's a minus sign in front, minus sign, negative number, same thing. All over to A. I will not grab my calculator and type that in because I will have issues, especially with all the negative numbers going on. So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Exponents and multiplication first. 4 times 4 is 16. I have a minus sign, a negative sign, and a negative sign. When I multiply all that together, I will end up with a negative number. Remember, negative, minus, same thing. So negative times a negative times a negative. 4 times 1 times 6 is 24. All over -2. Did I do anything wrong? No? Darn. Okay, well, I end up with a negative under the radical. What's that? -8. And currently, it is not possible to take the square root of a negative number. Hold that thought till next week, because we will fix that issue, but that's not an issue for now. Our issue right now, again, it's not possible to answer the question. I can still answer this question. It's just not possible to find any numbers that equal 0. So this graph will never equal 0, but there's still a graph. So we have to sketch the graph. Original problem, a is a negative, so it opens down. So the quadratic still exists, it just doesn't have any x-intercepts. So just a sketch, so it's kind of floating down there, it doesn't touch the x-axis. Question is when is this graph below 0? Answer is it's always below 0. Let's write that in the three forms. For a number line, it would be everything. It's always below 0. For an interval, it would be from negative infinity to positive infinity. And symbolically, x contains the set of real numbers. Real numbers, that means everything. It's all real numbers. So x contains the set of real numbers.